Well, James, it's wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
I'm so happy to be with you, Joe. Thank you.
You bet, me too. So, before we get into your wonderful world of writing, I want to know this. 5 years ago, this pandemic changed all of our lives, was such a momentous event for all humans. How did you get through that pandemic era, and how has it influenced the way that you live and write today in 2025?
Well, I actually have used the time of the pandemic to write more. And, that is really my way of engaging the world, my primary way. And yeah, the pandemic most definitely changed the whole world. And I think we're still changing from it. It's there's still repercussions. And I feel that um, it made me more aware of my vulnerability and everyone's vulnerability. And that the world that we live in, the things we take for granted, may suddenly not be there. And we'll have to find ways to adjust and take care of one another as best we can. And we just don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, Joe. We just don't know.
I gotta wonder if other generations felt like we do now, because the thing that roars through my brain when you say, we're gonna have to take care of some things or things are changing, with everything that's happening right now, with so many things that are getting rescinded, whoever gets back into political office is going to have to redo all of this. And it's going to take so much time because a lot of what's happening now just seems like excessive narcissism that isn't going to serve anybody any good, but maybe a few people. So,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? So I think that's the thing that's the most tragic right now is that how did well that's a whole other can of worms. Like, how did America get to this point? I think we know the answer, but I think it's almost like we're all collectively in a therapy session. If we get hung up on what's happened, we're gonna let all of that get in the way of what needs to be done.
Right, right. I think, what's happening now with our institutions, judicial, legislative, you name it, it's so hard to tear things down. I'm sorry, take that. So easy to tear things down, so
Yeah,
hard to build them back up.
yeah,
Like what you're saying, yeah, if we actually do at some point get wise leadership at the helm and locally as well, state and local, still it's going to take so much time, right?
yeah. It
Yeah.
certainly is. So let's get into exactly what you do on a daily basis. It's very evident on paper, but I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day. And the kid in the
Hmm.
back of the room that's curious about everything is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you
Hmm.
answer him?
Well, okay, I write. And like many writers, I have worked a lot of other jobs because writing fiction is not going to pay all the bills unless you get fantastically lucky. And the odds of that are really not very good. So I have had all kinds of side jobs. And Joe, the one that is the most fascinating. I worked alone as a night watchman on Alcatraz Island. Okay. Yeah, I was out there by myself at night. And I read so many great books. And so if that kid asked me, what do I do for a living? Well, I write and I do other things to support the little bit of income that I get from writing. I do other work also. I've worked as a teacher at City College San Francisco. I've done all kinds of jobs, drove a taxi in Chicago. Uh, so yeah, I what I love most is writing. And I'm a person who there are a few people in this world that truly have to write. They just are not going to make it otherwise.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those.
I just published my first book last October after 30 years of writing, and I've written in various capacities, but poetry has always kind of been, or prose, so to speak. And I always thought when I was really roaring and doing it all the time in my single days in my 20s, that I always wanted to have that Harvey P. Card blue collar vibe about me. I want to be
Hmm.
with the people, you know, I want to
Yeah.
be out in the world. I want to wake up in the morning. And I know that a lot of people bemoan and all of that, but I think there's something about that regiment and getting your body to be in this rhythm of being with all of the people that are part of the machine that we call America and making it work. And I think it provides such a wonderful backbone for writers to understand the mechanics because you're obviously very gifted at what you do. And one of the gifts that you have is that you have this insight and this wonder that's never, ever gone away.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like I'm able to write about people far different from myself. I'm able to write about different points of view in a lot of ways because I've seen so much in my world, in my life. I got drafted into the Vietnam War. I was a medic for a platoon, a combat medic. I've worked so many jobs when I came home. You know, I drove a taxi in Chicago. I sold flowers on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, and you name it, Joe. I've done a lot of jobs. And as a writer and as a human being, it has served me well because it has really opened me to what this world is and the kinds of things that people have to do to get by, to pay the bills, to be real, to keep the heart open no matter what's happening. So I'm actually grateful for the diversity of the experience that I've had, both as a writer, as a person trying to make a living in this some often difficult world.
Saying that you were a medic in Vietnam took me right back into a time machine back to when I was growing up and MASH would always come on after the local news. I know it was a different war, but it was the same idea. So when you said
Mhm.
that, I just Suicide is Painless, the song went roaring through my head. The intro. But that's interesting. So let's peel back the layers of this timeline of this interesting journey that you've been on. And I want to know this. What did you want to be as a kid? Was it always writing? Was there another dream that you had?
Well, uh, when I was in high school, to be honest, Joe, I goofed around a lot. I was not a very good student in high school, but I started writing a novel. And I wrote by hand and I would stuff the pages in an old Tinker toy box, until it was full. And so, that urge to write, to tell stories goes way back. And in grade school, really, my favorite assignment was when I had to write stories, you know. Then I was really totally engaged. And in high school, I don't think I was ever asked to write a story, but I started writing one and, my Tinker Toy box novel, long, long discarded, but, but yeah, so the wish to write goes way, way back.
What was your favorite book growing up, or what is one of the seminal books that's always kind of fueled your fascination for writing and wanting to read more?
Yeah, I grew up on an Illinois river town. LaSalle is the name of the town. And, the first home I lived in was 2 blocks from the river. And The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn,
Uh-huh.
so I really got into Twain,
Yeah.
and he is so insightful. I wish he were writing today about this crazy world we have. And his sarcasm, his humor, his compassion too, under it all. It really moved me as a kid. And it wasn't a book that I was required to read in high school. We didn't get to it. I don't know why, but it was one that I found and read and reread, and it shaped me in some ways. Yes.
Mark Twain's one of those guys that I would have loved to have ran into in a bar in my 20s when I didn't know who he was, right? Just this
Yes.
guy, right? And you're just having it out. And maybe at the very end, he's like, by the way, you're going to know who I am at some point. But
Yeah.
to have all of that. So let me ask you this. What was the first thing that you wrote where you got a visceral reaction from somebody that validated that you have a prowess with the pen? You have a way of moving people with your words. Did you have a moment like that?
Yes, and it goes back um 1993, and I was in a writer's workshop led by Maxine Hong Kingston, legendary author. The Woman Warrior and Chinaman are, I think, her best known books. But she really encouraged my writing and honored that I have a unique voice, that I have a lot of different stories to tell. Some of them mine, some of them those of other people. And she encouraged me to branch out, to not I think right now a lot of people are writing autobiography, and I've long been interested in the viewpoints of other people, and Maxine encouraged me along that route.
So I'm looking at all the books back there behind you, and there's some people on this planet that find an enormous amount of comfort with having a lot of books around them, and that's comforting to me. And the reason why I bring that up is I remember seeing the Library of Congress, and I was totally blown away. I'd never been around an environment like that. The Kansas City, Missouri Public Library downtown is quite stellar as well. What's been a palace of books that you've been in that you were just in awe of?
Well, City Lights Bookstore, it's an amazing place. There are three levels. There's the basement, there's the street level, and then there's upstairs where they have readings and more poetry upstairs. And I've long been fascinated by that store and its history, and um, it just feels like it's there for everybody.
Yeah.
And I know it's a big tourist place, and some people just go there because it's famous and they want to say they went there. But there's some real grit there too.
Yeah.
There's some history there, and there are people that love books that go there and go to readings there. And the love for the written word is, you can feel it. It's in the air there.
I think it's like I remember going to Wrigley Field, and when I sat in that upper deck and ate a hot dog, I just knew how many people had been in that facility that had just the love of the game. And it just felt, I've never felt anything like that at a baseball field ever.
Yeah, yeah, I love Wrigley Field. My
Oh my
dad
God.
took me there many times when I was a kid. Ernie Banks hit a home run every game I went to.
Yeah.
And I remember Joe sitting in the bleachers for $1. It was $1. I'm old, so it goes back a few years.
I remember meeting Ernie Banks at a golf tournament um,
Ah,
in Kansas City, and he was the nicest human I'd ever met because I grew up writing letters to baseball players, self-addressed, stamped envelopes,
hmm.
everything in hand. I don't know how my hand didn't just absolutely cramp up and get carpal tunnel by my 20s, but I was writing all these letters. But I remember Ernie meeting him, and I just clearly remember the day he was just in that card, and he just literally talked to me like we were old friends, like he was
Ah,
interested. He was just a really nice human and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and it was really cool. City Light is where Kerouac and all those cats kind of started
Right.
there.
Ginsburg and
Yeah,
Kerouac.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. All okay,
yeah,
that's right. Because Ginsburg, Howl, I remember that
yeah,
insignia. I was trying because when you said that, like thousands, I'm thinking just all of these Bukowskis and Beats and all of these guys,
yeah,
like how
yeah.
that was kind of the palace. That was the sacred place that you wanted to land if you were an author.
Yeah, and I think back in that time, I think it was 56 when Ginsburg published Howl, when City Lights published it. And they kind of I I think they took poetry out of, kind of the straitjackets of academia and brought
Yeah.
it down into the world, into the
Yeah.
street, and really made it accessible for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that kind of opened the doors to people like Billy Collins that kind of really just opened this Pandora's box of being marveled by regular tinkerings of humans, but do it in such an eloquent way that you won't forget. Because half the time when I read someone like Billy Collins, I have to stop after a few. I'm like, my God, it's like a train just went by my face that close for like
Yeah,
2 minutes. You just have to grab your breath,
right, right. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's
That,
amazing. So let me ask you this. Take me back to just kind of some of the seminal seeds, maybe inspirational figures, heroes in your life that have allowed you to have this wonder, that have allowed you to do, because there's something to be said about doing something like the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, doing something continuously throughout your lives. Who was that inspiration that's allowed you to evolve as a creative and to do this for so long?
hmm Well, Joe, really, there are so many. The authors, the people that I've met in my life, being a medic in Vietnam, seeing that kind of tragedy firsthand as a platoon medic, I feel like I had to find a voice to express at least a little of what I've seen of this world. And, I feel like, Hemingway had this maxim, write what you know. With me, it's more like write what haunts you, write what haunts you. And, the Vietnam War, more than 58,000 Americans died, but most people don't know that about 4 million Vietnamese died, North and South, combatants and non-combatants, mostly civilians. Um, and I saw a lot of that. And so um, that really changed everything for me. And then I got the Alcatraz job, perfect thing for a combat vet. You're out there alone on an island. And I'm reading all these great authors. I was reading Maxine Hong Kingston, quite a few years before I met her. I was reading N. Scott Momaday on Alcatraz,
Oh,
Housemaid of Dawn. Um, I read Moby Dick twice when I was on the island.
yeah.
Um, and I feel like, to be a writer, uh, you got to fall in love with language almost. For me, before I really began to write seriously, I had to really fall in love with language and story and poetry. Uh, you know, I read the all of Whitman's poetry while I was on Alcatraz, everything. Um, and Michael Ondaatje is a writer I go back to again and again. He just every sentence is beautiful. And some more modern writers, Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous is an incredible, beautifully written book. And so reading these stories, reading great writing inspires me to find my own words
Yeah.
and use those words in my own way.
Of all the things that we document in this very document happy era of ours, there's so many documentaries and we capture all of these moments, backstories, but not a lot with writers. It's really a solitary event. There's not a lot of action in typing on a computer. But
Right.
my question to you is this: if you could be a fly on the wall and watch any writer and how they kind of construct their world and float it around for a day around them, who would you love to watch create their stuff?
Michael Ondaatje. I feel like he writes in a place that is somewhere between just the edge of a dream and being fully present in the world.
Yeah.
He's a little bit removed, so he can see things that you might see from the edge of a dream that you wouldn't if you were smack dab in the world. That little bit of distance, I would like to be a fly on the wall in his writing room. Um, and in my own my own eccentric habits of writing. Sometimes if I'm stuck, Joe, I actually have a long strip of paper on my wall back here, and I'll write on the wall for a little bit by hand, and see if I can, loosen up the gears in his old heart, And so if somebody were a fly in the wall watching me, they would think, well, who is this lunatic? I don't know, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. What is it ultimately that gets you up every day to craft these words, to write, to push? Because the thing about writing books is that there, and a lot of people that haven't done this may not realize this. It's one thing to create this behemoth, but it's a whole other entity to promote it and to do all of the things that go into that process. So what is that collective energy for you every day to create, promote, and do all of it and take care of your own soul?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I guess what keeps me going at it is I want my writing to, in some way, in a unique way, to ease a bit of the suffering in this world. I want it to really open people to perspectives they've never seen. And because I've seen so many things in my life, I feel I'm well equipped to do that. That keeps me going. Having that experience, that varied history, really keeps me going. And I have got to create. There was one point in my life after the Vietnam War. I'd been home for several years, and I just I had a voice in my head that says, "You have to write or you're going to die." It was that strong,
Yeah.
And so this is it's really not difficult for me to sit down and want to write. What's difficult for me is the promotion aspect that you mentioned. It's a whole different world, okay? And I know so little about it. Joe, until very recently, I had a flip phone. So, so I
I
kind
get
of
it.
miss it. I kind of miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I remember being very late on the cell phone game and having that, and then kind of working my way up. And after I got the iPhone 4, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I can record on here. I can write. Anyway, it's just it's crazy. So your latest book, The Wire Walker, talk to me a little bit about this book, how the idea came about, and just and if we had mentioned kind of reading an excerpt, I would love to hear a little bit.
Yeah. This book had a very unusual origin. My wife and I were back in my hometown taking care of my mother, her last 4 years. And this is LaSalle, Illinois, a river town. And there's a local paper which mostly has local news. But um, I'm reading the paper one day and I come across an article about a circus, an actual circus in the Galilee in Israel for Palestinian children and Israeli children. And I became fascinated by this. And I started to think about what can the arts do that politics keeps failing at? And I've long been fascinated by circus. I've never been in a circus, but fascinated by it. And so I started doing all kinds of research, not initially with any idea to write a book. I felt like I've never been to that part of the world. I've actually been there twice since then, and including January and February of this year. I was in Palestine. Um, but after reading for about a year, I mean like 50 books or more about Palestine and Israel, I just had this strong urge to write. And initially, I tried to write from a white perspective, somebody on the periphery of a circus environment, not in Israel, but in Nablus, Palestine, in the West Bank, where they actually have a circus, a great circus, which I visited most recently in February. And so when I couldn't tell it from a white perspective, I ended up after many months, I think 3 drafts that misfired. I got up one morning, hardly slept at all, and I started writing, and the voice that came to me was that of a 16-year-old wire walker from Nablus. And, I had visited that circus. She's from the Balata refugee camp in Nablus, and there are about 30,000 people living inside 1 square kilometer. And so, when I visited the Balata camp, I could reach out and very easily touch both walls. I don't have long, especially long arms, but it's so cramped. And the buildings are generally about 4 stories high, and you just see the little line of sky, a tightrope sky overhead. That's all you see of the sky, this little line of blue up there. And that's when I knew I was going to write about a wire walker. Um, but I didn't know how to do it until 3 misfires, and then this voice coming to me one morning after I had barely slept. And I think I had this idea that I had to write from a white perspective because I'm white and all that. But my defenses were broken down. I had slept very poorly, and I just let in what was waiting to happen, you know.
Yeah.
Instead of writing what I was supposed to write, what I thought I was supposed to write, writing what really needed to be written.
Yeah.
And I could read a brief passage to you if you want.
Sure. Yeah. That'd be
Yeah.
great.
This is toward the opening of the book, and it it gives you an idea of the kind of place where she lives, and how narrow the alleys are. And by the way, there's a story reportedly during the second Intifada, an Israeli soldier was chasing a Palestinian man, and the soldier has, a rucksack, kind of like what I had when I was in Vietnam, and he gets stuck between the walls.
Wow.
And by the time his fellow soldiers pried him loose, there was no one to chase. But that's how narrow the walls are,
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, here's a little excerpt, Joe. The morning has come to our alley, first light, almost no light, and 2 men of Balata have left us for Allah. My grandfather mentions their names. Unlike me, he knows them, remembers them, but how can this help? 18 years old and 19 years old, young men with mustaches, hard eyes. I can't see them, only imagine. They strayed beyond the alleys, the crevices and cracks of the camp, the passageways so narrow the walls hold their breath. But they are in heaven. Most of us believe this, or wish to believe. Mothers who lose their sons wail their grief and ululate their joy. Lie still, or leap all the way to God. I wonder if I will ever be ready to die. I'm glad I'm a girl because most of our martyrs are young men or boys a few years older than me. I enjoy being alive, even on mornings when I can do nothing but sip coffee that burns my stomach. My grandpa likes it this way, bitter. He's skinny as I am, but his stomach is an iron basket. I would like to trade in my body for an iron one, a thick shell, or a body of light that neither bullets nor coffee can harm. Now I think light would be better than iron, far better. Iron can be melted, crushed, broken, or die in a pile of rust. Light is beautiful. Light is difficult to harm. So that's from the first page of the book.
Wow.
Here's a girl who's, she's a teenager. She's 16 and she's thinking, oh, I want to be made of light. You can't harm light.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't
That's
you can't
wonderful.
fire a bullet through the light
Sure.
and I'm still alive.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Of all of the adventures that you've been through, everything that you've done in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Hmm. The first thing that comes to mind, Joe, is when I was a medic, um, I got drafted out of my town, and when I arrived in Vietnam after basic training and 10 weeks medical training, I believe medics actually knew very little. It was mostly on the job training. Um, I did not have an opinion about the war. And after 6 weeks, I turned against it. I was in the Kuchi area, which was famous for its tunnels, just labyrinths of tunnels. And it was so heavily bombed. And I just, I thought, what if that happened to the cornfields around my town? It really bothered me. It really, really bothered me. And after 6 weeks, I refused to carry a weapon. And medics carried M16s
Right.
normally. And I wasn't sent to LBJ, Long Bin Jail. We called it LBJ. I wasn't sent there because I was a medic, and my primary role was to treat wounds. So I still was with my platoon. But briefly, I was, very unpopular with everyone because I refused to carry a weapon. But I'm proud of the courage that took, and people got used to it, and I still, I took lots of risks, and people, they respected that, and um, I did it without a weapon.
Wow, that's wonderful. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans of your work, everyone that knows you, everyone that works with you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm a contemplative who likes to sit in a room full of books and, you know, pick out a book that I love, say Passageway from Michael Ondaatje and Scott Momaday, James Baldwin, read a few pages, you know, let my mind soak that in and then let it take me in my own direction in writing.
Yeah.
I'm so inspired by other writers. I'm a contemplative. Um, I could be happy in a room full of books and hardly go anywhere. Um, but I'm also very at home in the natural world. I'm from a river town.
Yep.
I love this earth. I I'm in Albuquerque now, and my wife and I had a gravel yard, but now it's a jungle of plants. It's
Yeah.
it's really beautiful.
That's wonderful. So if anyone wants to get a copy of The Wire Walker or any of your other award-winning books, catch you at City Light, any other good business, where do they go?
Go to your favorite independent bookseller is
Okay.
what I would say. If you're in a town or a city that has an independent store, they need support.
Yeah.
So go to an independent bookseller. Any bookseller can order the book if they don't have it on the shelves. If you're in the Bay Area, come to City Lights on the night of the 23rd, Tuesday, 7 p.m. And I'll be reading and in conversation with Maxine Hong Kingston at City Lights. I'll be at Town Hall Seattle on October 15th. Um, and let's see, I'll be in Ottawa, Illinois, near my hometown on what is that, October 5th. So here and there, but easily you can get any of my books at an independent bookstore. If they don't have it, they can order it.
Sounds wonderful. James, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for
Yeah.
your time. Best of luck with the book.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really great to talk with you, Joe. All
Great talking
right.
to you.
You
Take
take
care.
care.